Happy to take a few questions. Right, we do have some publications back there. We did finish a study on Latino community needs in Southeast Michigan last fall. And I think it would benefit you to take a look at it because we compared Latinos to all the other groups in the state. So while it's focused on Latinos, it does present data on African Americans, on whites, and so forth, so that you can see. And so those other data will help you understand what's happening. Yes?
How do you think philanthropy impacts the positivity and negativity what you talked about today?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Philanthropy. How do you think philanthropy impacts?
Well, I think philanthropy is not working with a conscious understanding of the neoliberal order. In other words, they're talking about addressing issues of poverty, and they're using such things, the notions of collective impact and this, that, and the other thing. But if you don't seek to address the issue of poverty with a full understanding of the structure of the society in which you live, you're just going to keep doing over and over the same thing. I mean, you're going to mitigate the conditions of the people that you help, but you're not going to transform the structure of society for the long run. And yes, it's good to save a life, but it's better to save a group. And I don't think they're saving the group, they're saving individual lives. Yes?
How would you save the group? How would you change the structure here in the United States?
Well, first of all, you have to know what you're up against to begin with, right? So I told you tonight what you're up against. I think what I try to do is to promote an understanding, an awareness of the population, among the population, of what they're up against, so that at least they have the basis for developing some sort of collective solidarity so that they can begin to move in that direction. So that they can begin to make informed decisions about the ways that they vote, so that they can begin to make evaluative decisions and judgments about the policies that their elected officials are engaged in and so forth. So, we've been hoodwinked as a people for a long time, and I think, at least for me, in the time that I have left on this earth, is to try to help people develop an awareness of what they're up against.
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't been hoodwinked.
I'm sorry?
I haven't been hoodwinked. You're saying something about informing voters, and one of the reasons they were, at least in this state, I think across the country, they developed all of these, all of this power legislatively and administratively in government, is that they vote. Tea Party votes 100%. We vote 30%. And so it's not even so much that we've been hoodwinked about who to vote for, but we're voting at a very low percentage. The governor that we have right now would not be the governor if we had voted even at a 45% in this, Detroit to Bay City corridor. So it's a matter of, even with this election, with every election, is how do you get out the vote? And so that's the question. How do we grab the fire back? We had fire back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but that conservative group just stole the fire from our cave, because we're all still pretty primitive. And so I think the big question is, how do we begin to generate the kind of the passion to get back, so that we don't have this this feudalism that we've got coming in our direction.
Well, I think to a great extent, these things are determined by the material conditions in which we live. And the material conditions for citizens in the United States have been deteriorating over time. That is quite evident in terms of the kind of support that two radically different candidates represent today. You have Trump and Cruz on one side, which is the right-wing anarchist fundamentalist, and on the other side you've got Bernie Sanders. I mean, who would have expected in the 1960s and 70s that a self-proclaimed socialist would have the kind of backing that he has today. I think they're symbolic of the kind of class war that we are engaged in, that we have two populist movements. One of them, the right-wing one, especially under Trump, is more likely to lead us into fascism. I mean, the conditions are right. This is what prevailed in Italy when Mussolini came to power. And then you've got the other one, which represents collectivism, the public good, and so forth. So I think what we have to do, people have a sense of unease. They're ready and looking for something different. They don't have an understanding. You know, I heard someone say, well, if Trump is not the candidate, who would you vote for? And they say, Bernie. I thought, like, how can you go from here to here? I mean, like, it's radically different. And if you don't know the difference between those two candidates, I mean, it just bespeaks of the kind of hoodwinking that has gone on. I mean, the American media has just failed the American people in terms of keeping and promoting an informed citizen. So it's up to us to do it. How do you do it? I'm not sure. There's people who are very capable using social media and so forth. A lot of people are using it. But I think the material conditions are ripe, just like they were. I mean, the 60s didn't come along just because people said, hey, let's get up and change the world. The material conditions were right. They were right in several ways. For Chicanos, for Latinos, they were right as a result of the function or the impact of World War II, right? Because Latinos, Chicanos went to fight in World War II, survived the war, came back and says, okay, now I fought for my country, I'm going to be let in. And they weren't let in.
That's right.
And they said, this is wrong. African Americans were told with the Brown decision that separate education was inherently unequal education. And their expectations grew that they would now have access to a better education. Did not happen. So there were these frustrated expectations that gave rise to those conditions, right? I think we have very similar kinds of conditions today. We just need to be able to, one, utilize the technology to promote awareness, help people understand that Bernie and Trump are not the same kind of candidates. And that's very, very important. So we have an uninformed electorate, I think, is my point of view, and we have to do something about it. And so it's about being innovative and, you know, getting that fire back that got ripped out of the cake. Someone else? Yes.
I was kind of taken aback or shocked by the rise of Donald Trump. So it's always been, intriguing to me to try to figure out how this happened. And I have family members on the white side, not the Latino side, who support Donald Trump, even though they're on welfare and Medicaid. And this just, I couldn't make sense of it. I read an article among the many things I read, and he said that the poor white supporters, something that you mentioned, are more concerned about their honor than they are their own self-interest. And that made sense to me, but I was wondering what you would think. What you think?
Well, I think he harnesses a lot of different sentiments. One of them is, you know, that psychic fall from grace from the 60s, where they no longer have that sense of superiority, no matter how bad their standing is, right? And I think there's just an endless resentment to that because they're still alive. I mean, these are the people that experienced it, right? The other thing is they experienced economic decline. I mean, all of these manufacturing jobs literally left. And the reality of these people is, I mean, for many of us, I mean, we grew up poor. It didn't affect us so much, right? Because we just continued being poor. But if you were middle class and you lost your middle class job and so forth and you experienced decline, that's a big factor in your life, okay? So he's harnessing the resentment, the decline of economic standing, and then, you know, these hordes of immigrants who are coming over here and taking our jobs, right? I mean, we're standing in line, we, the white people, are standing in line to take these jobs, and these other people just come in front of us and take our jobs, right? I'm doing work on dairy farms, and I'll tell you what, There are no white people standing in line to take those jobs. They're so darn difficult and so darn hard. So he's just harnessing all of this stuff and mobilizing those sentiments against, scapegoating the immigrants, scapegoating this, and it all comes together. And I can really see it. I mean, it's the same thing that Mussolini harnessed in Italy back in the 1920s and 30s. It's exactly the same thing. Economic decline by those who had greater standing. And here you just add the loss of psychic satisfaction of being superior and the immigration piece, and you've got yourself a hornet's nest, ready to be mobilized. Yes?
To what degree does this psychic superiority is affected by virtue of us having an African American president? There must be a reaction to that by those that consider themselves empowered in the highest office, symbolize their superiority.
Oh yeah, I think he is a slap in the face to them, and they have. I mean, like I think when he was elected, I forget which senator basically said, "We're just going to stonewall everything that he tries to do because we're going to make him look like a failure, like a failed president." And they weren't able to do that. He hasn't been as successful as we would have wanted him to be, but he hasn't been a complete failure either. So I think they really resent it. I mean, it's no accident that young people gravitate to Bernie, because young people are much more tolerant. They're more a product of the post-civil rights period, right? They're more open to the different groups of people. They're not as socialized into racism and so on. Who is it that's supporting Trump? Older white males and now older white females, even though he says the dumbest things about women. I don't understand why white women would support him, but there are some things we just can't understand. I'm sorry?
I said, why do women marry him?
That's another thing, yeah. I won't go there.
And that's the reason why a lot of times when I look at our political in decline, they castrate themselves on TV by looking so mean, on acting mean, when they should be actually focusing, and they said, on the issues. They don't focus on the issues. They actually cut themselves in half, because you got a divided situation within themselves, the way they're thinking, until their neo-thinking, like you said, is causing them to lose the virtual reality of what the people need. And that's been a situation that's been in my understanding ever since the Depression, is that now we're going to get them to do what we want them to do. See, so the sovereign has always had the problem of getting to the top, because that crab in the barrel situation, we see them going to the top, let's pull them down. And that's what racism is all about, is to bring down that sovereign that's trying to get to the top. Of course, they don't speak about sovereign, but we're all born in this country. I think we're all sovereigns, and those that's not born in the country, they are sovereigns of another country, but still they come over here to do what we, the people, are supposed to do. And that's to have the freedom to be able to pursue the pursuit of happiness. And that thing has always been a marred situation as far as the public concerned, the people is concerned. We're talking about the Constitution, where I look at the Constitution, it's supposed to be for we, quote, the people. Now, who is the people? It's definitely not us. Huh? all those folks in politics that's been up there 30, 40 years, we have to think about that. They've been up there for 30, 40 years and drawing down our hard-earned paid money and send our money across seas to build up another type of situation over here across seas where they can draw money from over there and leave the country in which we are in totally without the things that we need to expand our minds, expand our economics, our economy, all the things that we need to exist.
Well, they truly believe in the ideology that I just laid out here for you.
Yes.
And their view is, I got mine, you
Get
get yours.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a level playing field. But the one thing I failed to mention, too, is, and it gets back to the question that she raised about, why would they support Trump? World War I gave rise, and World War II gave rise to the investigation and uses of propaganda. Right? In the 1930s, there was these Austrian thinkers and leaders, right-wing leaders across the country, across the globe, began to meet in France, up in the mountains in some chalet, and one of the persons there was, and I forget his name, was one of the fathers of propaganda.
Yeah.
And so they have been using these propaganda techniques to gain control and to manipulate the electorate. And it continues today. And they've become more and more, as the technology improves, they become more and more sophisticated at doing it. That's why they get people to vote against their own interests by mobilizing the emotions rather than emphasizing rational pursuit of their own interests.
The mountains are referring to the Pellerin Society.
Yeah. Who was the propagandist that was American?
Is it Edward Bernays or is it different one?
No, it was later. Bernays was the 20s. It was another one. I forget his name. Political scientist, but yeah.
We can take, maybe one more.
Okay, one more question.
One
Yes.
more question and then.
So you mentioned, I forget the professor's name, but they were talking about democratizing the economy.
Yeah.
What do you think about a guaranteed basic income?
I would support that because I think people, I think we have humanity, civilization has reached a level of productivity where we can achieve that and give people even Reagan talked about a minimum safety net, right? But every movement, has its ideologues that just take you into the abyss. And that's what we have today. But I believe, if we were guided by a different set of values, like we should create a social order in which people have a minimum standing economically, and then create the mechanisms by which they can develop more fully human. If we're guided by those values, as opposed to, let me get mine, and those of you get yours if you can. We have unleashed greed, and we're driven by a philosophy of self-interest. And, that's really not an approach that's going to lift humanity and take us to a higher level of civilization. If you believe that we can reach a higher level of humanity, if we can reach a higher level of civilization, then we really have to be guided by different values. So I don't have any problem at all with the minimum guaranteed income for people.
Thank you.